and reversion of a state. Also, when I was in Washington Tuesday, we were getting into it, but you ought to know how time flies, and we have been unable to necessarily finish. Most of the work that we're actually doing in general is in its nature of reversion of a state, as that is primal to the political operations, particularly in North America, but in the world actually. And so when we're going through processes of claiming rights and or dealing with the restoration of rights, etc., it's important to understand it's called reversion, or taking the birthright back, or taking the issue back. The hereditaments are corporal and incorporeal, and essentially that's actually at the heart or the nature of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, what Noble Drawley did. But I want to remind everybody, when they're looking at the politics, just like, how many of you familiar with Clearfield Doctrine? You're familiar? All right. The reason why the Clearfield Trust Company won that case, even though it's not mentioned in the text of the report from the court, this is the basis of it. Also, when you're looking at the current civil orders from Pope Francis, what he's making reference to is the construction of the 14th Amendment, which has root also in this. That when he's talking about the corruption and the criminal acts that took place 150 years ago in his letter, the civil orders, what he's making references to is the establishment of the Bureau of Refugees and Abandoned Lands, which is later called the Freedmen's Bureau, and of course, the creation of the 14th Amendment Corps, and then converting all of the defeated Moors to back the U.S. debt and tag them, basically as African Americans. And that's the foundation of your politics. Now, so this act of 71, as you can see, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which is a primal aspect of the coup d'etat of 1861. And of course, as you know, this is where the Congress adjourned sine die. And so most of the time when historians make reference to the assassination,
for the benefit of those that might not know, when you said adjourn sine die,
yeah.
Explain it.
Sine die. Any corporate entity, any organized body, politics, government, etc., when they adjourn sine die, that means without day. And an adjournment of sine die is essentially they dissolved it.
The Congress?
No, it means the United States was dissolved.
Okay.
It disappeared. Because you got to remember, it's an ens legis. I mean, it's a creation on paper. It's an agreement, a body politic agreement. And one of the things that also that we have to keep in mind, when you're looking at treaties and constitutions, they are identical to family wills. They're just on a broader scale. And because constitution principles are not taught commonly in controlled neighborhoods, that concept is not promoted, and therefore people don't know how to read constitutions and treaties. Nor do they have what you call a sense of association to them. They're just information that's looked at peripherally, and therefore people don't know that the abridgment of these instruments was to steal your estate or your birthright. This action, the coup d'etat of 1861, was initiated to institutionalize forced servitude, or what you call peonage and slavery at North America. So they talk about the Congress adjourning sine die, but they don't talk about it's a coup d'etat. You see. And of course, this is an excerpt from one of my lesson books, unpublished, the other half of 1481. This is liberties, the liberties section. And some of the notes from my Mac I gotta take off and put in here, because what I would always do over the years, I would take and separate the books. But anyway, this is an important concept of truth to comprehend and understand, because this reality is the political power that you're going to use to counter any claim by any government or pseudo-government operatives that come to take anything from you whatsoever, whether it's liberties, rights, tickets, houses, credit cards, mortgages, alleged debts, and all the rest. All of it's fraud. Doesn't exist. This is the foundation of it. And what you find is that most people are not aware of that. And not that scholars aren't aware, but you'll find that a lot of people are aware, but they won't talk about it because it will neutralize their organizations, most of which are party to Skull and Bones with their 501c3 agreements and other things that they think has to do with some spiritual basis, you know, and it's really political. So this foundation is what Pope Francis is talking about when he talks about the criminal acts 150 years ago. So when you know that, then you know how to use the Pope's address in any legal case. Any, doesn't matter what it is, you know. And of course, that's the basis of why the Clearfield Trust Company beat the United States on that principle of latches, about that I think it was a so-called $26.60 or something like that, forged check. And the United States was suing on the basis of latches for restoration of that, and the Clearfield Trust Company logically spent a lot of fiat just on the principle. And the reason why they did it is because of this, and because they know that the operations of the U.S. democracy is actually the political platform that was created to institutionalize slavery, distinguished from the Republic, which was overthrown 1861. That's the coup d'etat. And the whole foundation was to institutionalize our slavery, not somebody else's, ours. There's a whole foundation of all economic, social, political problems that befall so-called African Americans in the Western Hemisphere, North America. And of course, a lot of scholars stay away from this because they can't comfortably use the trained race arguments and the let us pray type conversations by, you know, if they tell the truth, because now they have to start demonstrating their so-called powerful spirituality and start dealing with problems. You know, like the Bible says, Jesus said, you know, physician, heal thyself. You know, so they stay away from material like this because they can't peddle emotional solace conversations, because this is where the people's problem is. Not in somebody don't like you and your color is bad and all this kind of stuff. No, it's the coup d'etat of 1861, institutionalization of forced servitude at Morocco. And that's the 14th Amendment. That's the setup for its creation, to create the dead and to convert the living's blood into the dead. And then for the vampires to feed off the dead. That's what the 14th Amendment is. That's where corporations were given the quality of person, and that's why. To steal the birthright of the Moors. And the U.S. democracy was the political platform that was secretly created there.
Because we were in a republic.
Huh?
We were a republic before.
You forget your voices.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My question is, or my statement, is that before that we were in a republic form, if you will.
That's it.
Okay.
It's not that we were, that is.
Okay, that's all right.
In other words, just like you or you, just because somebody hides you in a closet and cover you up, you're still you. This is reflected, this is a reflection of still the story of the birthright theft in genetics in chapter 25. It's still, everything that's in the Bible is reflected actually in the politics. This is the theft of the birthright.
So it would seem that there's sort of a trading places sort of.
That's it. They're telling you that again too. That's
So-
why.
Yeah.
Let's back up for a minute. That's a good opportunity. When the movie opens up with Eddie Murphy, pay attention to the symbolism. He's on a dolly platform.
Purple.
His foundation is gone. His legs, although he really has them. Right?
Right.
Now, the issue of this building and this European wealthy that ends up trading places with him, so to speak, is stock market. And stock, all right?
Stop.
The real deal of it is that really is trading places, but not the way that you think. So what the traded places is actually a correction.
Put it in the right.
So there's an assumption that he's poor and the European's rich, and the real deal is that the Europeans are the real Negro, and they were poor. They overthrew the nobles, took out the foundation, and so we got legs and we cannot walk. Just like the Bible says, we have ears and cannot hear, we have eyes and cannot see. I come amongst my own, and they receive me not. So Rome is ruling them. And this is really the political operations of the theft of the birthright. And when you understand this, when you really understand this, you understand the spirit base of the divine and national movement set up by Noble Drew Ali for correcting this, for restoring it. This is why in the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, he says, the 14th Amendment is not necessary for the salvation of my people and citizens. And then he says, go back to that state of mind of your ancient forefathers. Then he also says, the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. He says, study. When you would have studied well and would ask me what to study next, I would reply, study yourselves. Because we keep looking outside ourselves. Mm-hmm. And once you do try to counter what he presented, you would find this. You know, and of course, when you hear people talk about the 3630 parallel, the Bureau of Refugees and Abandoned Lands, the only thing they usually speak about is 40 acres and a mule, nothing more. They don't even know the history. You know, anything of substance. They just hear 40 acres and a mule, and you ask them to give a background, they have no knowledge whatsoever. That's what this is about. You know, so it's a restoration of the state. But of course, initially and progressively, the first initiation would have been the repatriation of the Moors between the Rocky Mountains and the Alleghenies. And of course, that would have been what you call a domino effect. And they would eventually got all the land back. So this is another reason they killed Lincoln, and this is why they adjusted the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's also why, you know, twice, from 62 to 63, and then when they issued it again, of course, they created this Negro stuff, you know, traded places, because the European is really the Negro. And then that's the trading of places. Then, with the modification of the Emancipation Proclamation, they murdered Lincoln, set up the secret government, because they needed a platform for the demons. And that's what the U.S. democracy is. It's for the dark priesthood of the Vatican, i.e. the Jesuit order. And that's what's been running North America and the world ever since. Now, the job of the so-called scholars is to keep the people's mind off of this. You know, to just mention this stuff in loose circumstance. Oh, the Congress adjourned sine die, but they don't say they overthrew the Republic and that it was a coup d'etat. Now, glasses underneath. Then, of course, Lincoln was in the way. This is what also must be remembered when you're looking at this stuff. So scholars know that Abraham Lincoln was the last lawful president. No one after Abraham Lincoln was a lawful president. Do you understand? And no one after Lincoln had any what you call legitimate sovereignty power that they've been exercising. This is where you see Pope Francis, in his recent speech to Obama, tells you that Obama is a contractor and he's a foreign dignitary. You know, so you see all these signals, and this is why you see, because the signals is really that they're closing out the chapter. They're closing out the chapter of these operations. And this is why Obama exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. This is why Michelle went to the Alhambra, the last stronghold of the Moors, 1492, Romanus Pontifex. This is why Rahm Emanuel, the Jew, left his administration, ran for mayor of Chicago, which is Mecca, and December the 22nd, which is the first full day of the winter solstice, North Gate, according to Circle 7, issued a proclamation telling you the geography, the parameters of the Moorish estate, telling you that the Moorish Americans are aboriginal to this land, North, Central, South America, all of this. And he's a Jew. So if you understand those signals, then you understand why Hillary spoke from the Ben Franklin room after the Benghazi incident, which they do not do publicly. They never speak from the plenipotentiary's room. But it was a message. And then you see the 3 American flags behind her. So the masses don't know that the Moorish flag is the Al-Moroccan flag. They think that the Stars and Stripes is the American flag. That's a trading banner. You know, that's the banner of agreement between the Moors, because it's actually the continental flag. So you see the red flag with the green cedar tree in the canton. And if you go to Washington, D.C., you'll see that flag. That's called, they'll have an order, a Masonic order, what they call the tall cedars of Lebanon. And that is their continental flag. That's the flag of the continent. It's also called the Bunker Hill flag, and it's called the treaty flag. Now, so what you're supposed to see is the Al-Moroccan flag, which is the sovereign, the continental flag in the middle, and then the agreement for the Europeans doing business at Morocco. That's the Stars and Stripes, and the stripes are actually supposed to be vertical, not horizontal.
Right.
You know, so when you know these things, and all scholars know this stuff really, but it's so contrary to what the masses are taught that it's almost like talking to children or talking to a wall to try to make them deal with reality, you know, although it's their estate. And so the people have a tendency to look at this information, interesting. Yeah. Here's a demonstration of it.
What's the flag?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's the Europeans telling the truth now, because the middle class is being dissolved. You know what I mean? Oh, excuse me.
Oh, sure. That's how it be all the time.
Yeah.
It should be out of the way. When they have to see,
Say it again?
when they have to see, then horizontal. When they have to see,
Yeah,
then it's horizontal.
yeah, because that's the admiralty law. That's the law of booty and prize.
Yes,
And that's where you have, during Roosevelt's administration, when they did the birth certificate bonds for the banks, for the Vatican, that's called booty and prize, and that was called the War Act. Trading with the Enemy Act. Yes, trading with the Enemy Act. So write that down. These are reference points where you get your concepts together. And keep in mind, because this is a lot of times when we go over these things, it's simply because we know what's going to take place. And this is so that people can have some protections by being prepared for what's going to hit them. You know, the best way to help people is to give them the truth of things that are going to take place before they take place, so that they can use the intelligence that their mother gives them to protect themselves to the limit that they will have. And so a lot of these things we talk about is in the basis of the reversion of your estate. And the reversion of your estate, reversion is a law term of a state which deals with hereditaries, both corporal and incorporeal. And keep in mind, the U.S. democracy is, in fact, the political platform that was constructed so as to administer the bonds against the Moorish Empire. That's the whole foundation. You know, and then when you look at even the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, and they divide up the Moorish Empire under the guise of the Ottoman Empire between the Constantinian nations under the guise of the Christian nations, and that's the foundation of the dividing of the estates amongst they'll say Christian nations, but those scholars know they're really Constantinians hiding behind Christianity. That's the politics. And then you have what is called P2 Masons, which are the Masonic Order of the Vatican. They got fezzes too, but they don't wear them in public. Because it's still, you know, controlling the Moorish estate. And all of your world politics is based in this. And this is, again, why serious scholars, when sometimes you see we will fairly criticize so-called black leaders, because anybody that's got any degrees got this information. And when they avoid this information, you already know they're COINTELPRO. Logically, people who don't have a background, you know, they usually have an emotional tie, you know, relative to who they like, who they don't like, whatever. But if they had knowledge, they would have liberated themselves from all of these vampires. And this is where Yeshua says, know you the truth, and the truth will make you free. And then the leader guys keep on saying, more tithing, more prayer, more belief. But the book says knowledge is the reason they are damaged. You know, a lack of knowledge. Pardon me, not knowledge itself, but the lack of knowledge. And when you really study the Kabbalistic nature of the Bible, etc., the naivety and the spookiness is removed. And you actually look at how it functions, how it relates not only to the activation of the chakras, you know, your body, yourself, but also projections of what you call astrological turns of the wheel, so that you can see the pit holes and prepare yourself for them. Because actually the Bible is an astrology book. I mean, people know that, but I just want to point that out to you. But keep in mind, the difficulty that the dark priesthood has operating their bondage.
I didn't get a picture of it, that's all. I'm putting it in.
Bondage is those bonds. You know, and just like you see a lot of people now talk about the birth certificate.
Remember how people would be in stocks and bonds?
We are the stocks and bonds. That's why that Eddie is, you know, stocked, you know, and he's handicapped. You know, he has no foundation, has no legs, but he does. You know, so when you understand those symbols, the significations, just like Wizard of Oz, where they tell you the same story. You know, where the line of Judah is the true Yahudi. We've lost our heart, no courage. And then you see the straw man, which is the 14th Amendment, that you see right there. And then the rusty tin man, that's industry, stagnated. And then the yellow brick road is the zodiac, that's your culture. Emerald City is your star, Venus, you know. Of course, the Wizard of Oz is the fake god, and the dog is God spelled backward that uncovers it. The monkeys is Negro Yavira Arebo, the nemesis of the hybrid that's been this whole problem. Then you have the East and the West witch, wise woman, and even when you see the house, zodiac houses, falling, you know, when the wicked witch, and it you know, falls on top of her, and then the good witch tells Dorothy, say, Dorothy, don't you, I know you like them kicks, you know.
One of them, somebody, one of them might.
The other one. Oh.
No, battery, something's making noise with the battery.
All right. So the signals are told to you over and over again. But again, getting back to the point, a lot of things that we hit on, or even some things that we deal with redundancy, is because we already know there's so much information that's out there that the people need to have to clear their minds, but what they lack often is foundation information. And so we try to hit on foundation information so that people can clear their own minds or purge their minds of misconceptions, because the lack of this knowledge is what allows people who are opportunists to take advantage of the people and guide them into pockets and then rape them, while the people really have no remedies. You know, they fall in love with images, but they actually have no knowledge that works anything. You know, and so these things affect everybody. Now, the reason why, again, like you see that book, Anna von Rees, you know, which is good. The reason why you see that now is because their class is being dissolved. And so they're being forced to tell the truth that they always knew. But it doesn't mean that other scholars didn't know this information. It is what is called the great Masonic secret. Nobody talks about it because institutions will collapse. You know, just like say when Malcolm started finding this out, that's why the Masonic signal was, get your hand out my pocket. And then they shot him because they couldn't buy him off, because they knew that he had found out the adolescence. You know, see, so when somebody, if they're not what you call a made man, and that's a kind of a loose phrase for people that are brought into what is called the elite or the inner circles. That is in your higher degrees of masonry. So that means you find out how the world is really run, not what the masses have been trained to believe. Then they have the initiations, because some people, you know, once they find out that this thing is run by oligarchs, you know, some people are not necessarily fired up to continue to support it. You know what I mean? Just like when they find out that the ritual that they use in the church of eating the body of Christ and drinking the blood, that's symbolic of what they do for real.
Yeah.
You know, and so when they start finding, you know, that they've been sacrificing babies and eating them, and then the leftover scraps, even from abortions, you know, sent to fast food joints and to community supermarkets, and is blended in with all the other mixed animals that they call hamburgers and hot dogs and bologna. And one of the things they do to cover up the DNA, the smell and stuff, is called melt. It's like a heavy gel cake that's very red. It's called melt. And after they grind up the different animals and humans, and they mix them, and they put melt in there, and that's what gives your hot dogs, the bologna, that tone, that color that they have, etc. And it also, it's mostly a food color, but it comes in a gel. And also, it covers up the unsavory smell and the look of that grayish mush that comes out of the different animals and human mixture that they put in the tub and make these hot dogs and bolognas with. Mainly hot dogs and bolognas that they make that with. And in all your fast food, and it wouldn't take much research, just take a handful of any of it and you'll find human DNA in all of them. Same in the supermarket. So when people, go jumping, getting their hamburgers and their so-called Salisbury steaks and stuff, they're eating their children. But also, this is also a way that the dark priesthood kind of take karmic debt off themselves by actually feeding the children back to the people who don't know, so that they can look like they're part of this carnage. Spiritually, they are contaminated. So you can't knock the dark priesthood and you're eating your babies too. And it's true. But back to point. So the U.S. democracy was the real secret creation of this 1861 coup d'etat. And the purpose, now this is interesting too. And we can get into this later. I'll give you some information on this a little later. Now what occurred was that secretly the coup d'etat was going on even while Lincoln was still, in the living form. And what it was, because of the original, and this is where you all get, many of you who I've given maybe years ago, from the House records, the original article of Amendment 13 with its 20 sections from the House journals. And it's also called the Nobility Clause. And keep in mind, in the agreement of the Europeans doing business at Morocco, that the barristers of England could not hold office. Could not hold office. That's called the Nobility Clause. And they could not take on the title of nobility because we were the nobles, which is logical. All right. And this was also set forth to overthrow that. This is why, when you do a little research, you'll find, I think, the last public printing of the Nobility Clause was somewhere around 1874, I think, somewhere in Kansas. Newspaper was, I think, you all can do a little bit of research. I think about the last time that it was publicly printed. And so, and then after that, you have the two sections that are presently printed in what is called the Constitution of the United States, distinguished from the Constitution for the United States, which is the organic Constitution. So the Constitution for the United States, which comes from Muslim law, was suppressed. Constitution of the United States is them taking more or less a picture of that, or what you call a template, and presenting it as if it was the original national will. Because remember, constitutions are national wills. And so the original article of Amendment 13 with its 20 sections was suppressed, and the platform, political platform known as the U.S. democracy was created. And again, like I was saying a little earlier, Lincoln was tricked because, keep in mind, Lincoln was a member of the Barristers Association, so he could not run for president. So what they did, they set up a platform, they set up the original platform for this later coup. And so that's when the U.S. democracy was set up, and so he was run for president of the corporation. And when he figured it out that it was a trick, he tried to correct it, and they killed him. It's not only the couple of cases where Lincoln, he became famous for at that time because a couple of cases where Moors were designated as Negroes and put under the Negro codes. Lincoln did a couple of cases like that, which was undermining this issue of them trying to institutionalize servitude. And so do the research, and you'll see a couple of cases where Lincoln makes the distinction between Moors and Negroes. Same people, same blood, different status. You know what I mean? And so that didn't help the cause, so he had to go because he tried to correct it. And when he realized what they was really doing, this is when he started trying to go back to the order of the Republic. And this is where the so-called greenbacks that they talk about that were backed by gold that Lincoln printed, and they dumped him and covered that up, if you get the point. And so you see that pattern going on ever since Lincoln. You see? And so the Act of 1871, which is, you can see 10 years later, was the ens legis, which is supporting the coup d'etat of 1861. That's actually the creation of the U.S. democracy. All right? And so when you see I have red, that's because I'm still editing. You know, so when you see red, I'm still editing. And so in civil law, an act is a manifest in writing which states in a legal form that a thing has been said, that a thing has been done, or that a thing has been agreed to. Now, an act of Congress is a piece of legislation that is formally passed by the lawful and de jure members of that body politic, who are constitutionally delegated the limited powers by the people via the Constitution to legislate for the state/nation. And these said legislating powers are fundamental to the two houses of the Congress and are, defined via Article 1 of the American Constitution. Now, the designated limitations structured within the properly administered constitutional government are set forth as at Article 4, Section 4, Republic, a seriously impacting and important political aspect about the underlying and deviant social political engineering at North America, Al-Marak, was the clever and targeted undermining of the following three primal documents that rest at the foundation of governance for the United States Republic. And those founding documents consist of 1, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 86 to 87, amended 1836. And as you can see, when Obama goes before the world delegates, he speaks of the Treaty of Tripoli, which is part of this series. And he goes to Article 11, so write that down because it's important to understand why he strategically did that. And then, of course, number 2, the Ordinance of 1787. The Ordinance of 1787 is the foundation upon which the agreements was made, how the Union should be run, its form of government, etc., and particularly with emphasis to protect the rights of Aboriginal people, you know, because the Europeans were being brought into government. And so your so-called founding fathers amongst the Europeans were actually deists. They weren't Christians, they were deists. They were European hierarchy who was running away from the Christian order of the dark priesthood. And of course, you know the Inquisition, or what you call the Spanish Inquisition, is and was the Inquisition against the Moors. And go ahead.
Is the ordinance of is the ordinance of 1787 different from the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, or that?
No, this is a series. Now,
So,
when you in your treaty book, this is the point. Whenever somebody's talking about the American Constitution, right? If you're being taught Constitution law, these three documents are to be taught together. What you find is that they're not taught together. And the reason they're not taught together is because they would reveal too much history. Meaning they're totally connected. And pay attention to the dates that you see upon them. 86, 87, 88, 89. And keep in mind, 1789, that's when George Washington was brought into the order. You see? And so that's again why they keep teaching people that he was the first president, so you don't pay attention to this which went on before or prior. This is another reason why when we're looking at, like in your treaty, your book of Treaty of Peace and Friendship and the Constitution, that's why I did that book, in order to clear people's concepts, because they are miseducated by the scholars. And then, of course, you know, people who know this stuff, it doesn't support black organizations. Because people think that's an idea, and of course you already know that's really bonded chattels. And so if they teach this, you know, what you find is, no matter what so-called school of thought you come from, you cannot eliminate the truth of the history for whatever political agenda that you have and fail to teach these people this, because this is the foundation of their operations. It's the foundation of their economic politics and their servitude that everybody keeps marching and praying about. You know, they keep talking about the mistreatment of the so-called African Americans, and that's why they always argue race and things like that, to divert you from what it really is this, when they should know this. And so logically, the people are declared incompetent because they're always talking about race, and here's where the problem is. And they have no familiarity with it whatsoever. You see the point?
Yes.
And then you also understand why anybody in political power must have a fez. And you already know that fez, province of Morocco. And it doesn't matter whether they're so-called Christian, Jew, or Muslim. They all got fezes in their secret orders. You see the point? While playing dumb. You know what I mean? And that includes even, you know, J. Edgar Hoover that set up the COINTELPRO operations that control these so-called black leader guys, who all pretend they don't know these people are Moors. But again, and keep in mind, and it didn't take Obama to tell you that, but any scholar will tell you that, what the Treaty of Peace and Friendship is the world's longest running treaty. And the Treaty of Peace and Friendship is the treaty against what? The Moroccan Empire and the United States. And so the United States is an appendage of the Moroccan Empire. Once you understand that, you understand where Drawley said in the divine constitution bylaws, being part and parcel of this said government, you must live your life accordingly. Parcel means land. You know, so he's giving you a lot of keys, but people who don't understand the history just think that he's saying some interesting things in some Islamic club type thing, when he's actually giving you the highest degrees of Masonic history relative to your estate. But he's giving it in a way that the people aren't threatened by it, if you get the point, in a simplistic manner. And but any you know, Skull and Bones Illuminati member, Knight of Malta, or any Master Mason knew exactly what he was doing. And so he becomes, you know, dangerous because he got these little pamphlets, and they are nuclear knowledge. Those little plant pamphlets, because if you use them, they'll take you to a world of knowledge.
Universal
You
property.
get the point? And this is why you see the so-called black leaders don't like Noble Drawley, or they try to pretend that, oh, he was a good man, and then no discussion about it. Meanwhile, half the stuff that they get, they steal from him, and then try to take credit for it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because, and it's not because of him, it's because the truth is what it is. It involves everybody. You can't deny this because your club don't aim into this. This is everybody's history. This is your real history, here. You know, and so logically, if you don't know this, you're incompetent. And an incompetent person in law is not descendable. This is why these people are all declared wards of the state. Because they keep talking about race, and this is what their problem is. You know, so logically, all estate that they may acquire is automatically cribbed, or what is called defaulted, to the state. And then they agree to be minor in the mind, call themselves minority, thinking it means Afrocentricity. And again, it makes them not descendable. And this is why you see a lot of so-called black leaders keep talking about black and white as complexions when they know it's a legal status. See, so they'll promote the connotative meanings, which are really connotative presentments because they're not the true meanings, and then they build a foundation on it. And that's what is called black culture at North America. And black culture will not deal with the real truth. It's controlled information. You know, but yet all the leaders in secret got a fez, even if they don't wear it consistently. And then again, act like they don't know who the Moors are. So, again, Brother Anmu, when you're talking constitutional law, you're talking about an international law, covenant, and document. And when you're talking the Constitution, you're talking the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, 1787, amended 1836, to the Ordinance of 1787, the Constitution for the United States of America, 1788, 1789. And so where they did the coup, the word for is changed to of. You know, it's just that simple. Now, a scholar would recognize that. A person who's not a scholar wouldn't recognize the signal because they can't read. You know what I mean? And of course, the leader guys won't point that out because most of them are compromised. You know, they get their 501c3 Skull and Bones kickback that they keep saying come from Jesus or Allah, you know, for teaching the word, and the people actually believe it. You know, and so all they gotta do is say spirituality and prayer and salat and all that stuff, and the people get all emotional, give them their lunch money. You know, but another scholar knows that they're full of Judah. But by the people being, you know, enamored, the people who are actually being victimized by them will defend them. You understand? Then when the European has no more use for them, he neutralizes them. And all their spiritual power goes out the window. Because the European ain't impressed, because he already knows that the masses don't get no spiritual instruction. They deal with emotionalism and mind control. It's called social solace. That's what it's called. What the masters get, the dogmata, is called social solace systems. That's the fact name for it. That's how it's used among scholars.
Social, what do you call it?
Social solace. S-O-L, yeah, A-C-E systems. Is S-S-S.
So when that 4 pops up,
Say it again.
when you say the Constitution for the United States.
Yes, that's the proper one.
Yeah, but when they put that
Yes, that's the coup.
that you should.
That's 18, that's that 1781, that's what was done. In other words, and this is what they did. In order to fool the people, to make them think that the Republic was still in order, they changed it, but what it became, this is when you see people talking the public-private argument, that's its origin. That's its origin right here too. So when people are talking about financial statements, Uniform Commercial Code, birth certificate, knowing the difference between public and private, and all that kind of stuff, this is its root. This is its root. In other words, what they've done, they've taken the estate birthright of the Moors and put it in a public venue. This is where the Pope is talking about when he says after the Civil War that African Americans were enslaved by the U.S. government, that's the U.S. democracy, and used as chattels to back U.S. government debt. And that's where you have the private rights converted into the public venue, and this is where you have the ens legis transmitting utility creation, or the man of straw, i.e. the 14th Amendment. Its true function was to institutionalize slavery. And this is where the brand system was emphasized. And so, and this is where Drolly tells you, when it was accelerated, you know, it was being practiced, but when it was accelerated, what you call started to solidify, was 1779, and this is where the Negro, Black, and Colored brand systems, and particularly the Negro word, was transferred to the defeated Moors in order to steal their birthright. And these little things, and see, it sends you right back into this period of time, and once you do study, you'll find it yourself.
So also, Todd, if you would, explain to them how that word is so treacherous in so many of the things that we use today. Like, take, for instance, you have a car, and they send you a title.
Yeah.
It's a certificate of title.
So it's a certification, so a certificate of title means this is a certification instrument that tells you that a title exists. That's what it's really saying. That's what it's saying.
You don't have that.
When I say that people can't read, I'm telling you what that says. When it says, when people go so-called think they're buying a car, they give them a certificate of title. What that reads is this: a certificate exists. I mean, a title exists. This certificate is the verification of that title's existence. But they tell you no more. But the deal is, you don't have the title. See, but they know that people can't read. And even when they turn around and so-called trade it to someone else to sell, says, oh, I got the title to that car. No, they don't. They got a certificate. Because what they're doing, the same use of that car, they're sharecropping. See, that's how sharecropping was institutionalized. This is the Act of 71.
They gave it to you under trustee and fiduciary rights.
Now, this is what it is, exactly. And so the corporate state, and this is where you get your states of all have their origin. Instead of, you know, New Jersey State Republic is state of New Jersey. And scholars know that they're two different entities. Non-scholars don't know that. Politicians know that. You see? Masons know that. That's why you have secret orders for those who are chosen as to have a degree amongst the elite. They're given certain key information that brings them out of the dead. And the dead are people in 14th Amendment who are called what? Civil liter mortuus, which means dead in the view of the law. You see? And of course, all the marching and praying that people are doing, they're trying to get back to life. And of course, the phrase for a living man or woman is called in full life. So even when you see people always joining organizations in the name of rights, etc., they don't even have this foundation how the rights was taken away from them. But they have a whole bunch of organizations, they raise finances, they have dinners, they have funds, and half the people that even participate don't even know the history of the organizations. As an example, this is an example. You ask the average persons, and you have family members who have been contributors to, like say, as an example, the NAACP. for years. And if you tell them, give you a background on the Niagara movement, they get cross-eyed and don't even know what you're talking about. The Niagara movement was overthrown, neutralized, and changed by Ashkenazi into what is called National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And in its charter, it is written that they can't own property. And they've been funding their own enslavement. Do you understand? So these things as simple as this, just like this, people don't have a foundation of the operative politics, but they're paying taxes to an imposter government funding their own enslavement. And then going to tell you about Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad. Of course that's disgraceful, but they still are under the idea that they're spiritual and they know Allah and Jesus. And of course, civilized world laughs at them all the way to the bank. And then their Negro leaders start pretending to be spiritual, giving them a whole bunch of collage of information, but staying away from this kind of stuff, which is at the root of their problem. This is one of the reasons why we give you this information, because, you know, once it's yours, you can't be fooled. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean other information ain't important. It means it's properly categorized, and you're not diverted into putting your energy into things that are of no worth. It is sort of like the principle that you see in the Bible or Quran or any of the holy books, where it says, how dare you claim the love of God you do not see, and love not your brothers whom you see every day. Likewise, it is, how dare you claim to know what's on the dark side of the moon, and you don't even know how to get across town without getting profiled. Same principle, meaning you can't even deal with what's in front of you, but you're always talking about some abstract thing that you have no power to adjust to. Just like, you know, like people always talk about, you know, what's on the dark side of the moon, right? You give them a map in Utah and they're lost, if you get the point. And they talk about, you know, what the Nephilim are doing, or, you know, Anunnaki is doing, you know, on Venus. You know, you let them off on a corner. You know, they lost and crying on Venus. Strange skies and everything. What the hell is that? 2 stars and shit. You know, all kinds of stuff. Seriously, you know, but we really have to kind of understand what the books are really telling us. It means that our charge is to overcome the obstacles here before you rise into any other degree. You know, it's sort of like somebody's always arguing about what dessert is. They ain't stuck a fork in the dinner yet. You know, the potatoes getting mold on it, and they talking about what's for dessert. But anyway, so it's important for people to have a background. You all right, bro?
Yeah.
All right. It's important for people to have a background to understand how things function, so people can't take advantage of us. This also goes for your politicians, leaders who are assigned to control you. These are called overseers. And the best way to control people is to present somebody that's promising some kind of spirituality. That's why most of your leaders always have a tag of so-called religion with them, because people trust that.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And so what they do, they use what people most trust to actually get at them. And it don't mean that all the guys that, you know, and the women that claim religion are dishonest. It doesn't mean that. It means, number one, anybody that's a scholar whatsoever, and anybody that's what you call a doctor of ecclesiastics, logically is a PhD. And they have to have these backgrounds in order to get that PhD. Now, whether or not they teach it, that's another thing. But one thing for sure is that they are not absent of this information. They may choose not to promote it because it doesn't promote their clubs.
Right, so they use it to their advantage.
Why? Because the knowledge will liberate people. Because after the people know how the machine works, they can't play them no more. They actually got to build with them and do some progressive things or leave them alone. You know, this is why usually when people get what you call an awakening, they're no longer useful to these clubs, to belief clubs. Because it's like, you know, like when you're a child, you're impressive, you know, and so child, you know, you give a child some building blocks, you know, little boats on it, and little cars and different colors and numbers. And a child can be up there on that stage all day playing with them blocks and having fun. And then the child learn how to spell her name a little bit. You know, they want, Daddy, come look at the name. You know, they're happy. You know, but when you see your college son up there playing with them blocks, if he ain't playing with the little children with them blocks, you start wondering, you got some problems. Now, and this is the same thing in the real world when we, as adults, who don't know how this stuff really works, when you're dealing with belief systems in the world of scholarship, that's the same as an adult playing with building blocks. Because the real truth of it is belief systems are for children, just like the blocks. And when you become a man or a woman, you're supposed to put them childish things away. But the priesthood has kept the people on the child degree and made them think that belief is the rival degree or the ascendant degree. And it isn't. It is the base degree for points of reference for children to relate to forces and powers given personalities that look like them, for the most part, that didn't exist. Do you understand? They're forces and powers, you know. And priests know that. And scholars know that. They know that them books are entirely Kabbalistic. Like a scholar will tell you, like you ask a scholar about Quran. Quran means reader. Holy Quran means sun reader. Holy Bible means sun book. That's what they mean, that's what those words mean. Holy Bible, sun book. Holy Quran, sun reader. You know, and now scholars know this. You know, plus scholars know that Prophet Muhammad is blood relative to the one they call Jesus. But yet when they talk about them as totally, as if they're just totally alien in total culture. You know, but yet, and this interesting thing is, this morning before I was talking to a couple of people I was sitting with for about an hour or so before I went to Delilah's on 52nd Street. You know, a couple of Christians and a couple of Muslims. So we were sitting having coffee. And one of the, a young sister came there with her children and she gave me a hug and she was saying, I saw some of the stuff you told me a couple years ago. I finally looked at it and I'm thanking you and I want my children to thank you because I'm no longer naive. And every time I see her now, she does research and shows me information. That's Sharice, you know Sharice? Yeah. And then there was this other sister there, Miss Riley. She was a Christian, you know, that Christian mentality. And so Sharice took on her phone, went on the internet and showed her Article 3, the secret oath of the clergy, with the secret treaty of Rome. You know, and her eyes popped and everything, you know, and she said, yeah, because they're submitting these people to the Pope, telling them that they're delivering them to Jesus. And she said, I'm so glad I'm out of that. I've saved a lot of money since then. But it's things like that. But even, you know, the other thing that she said, yeah, because she was telling me that she wanted me to meet this guy from some African country, I forget. But anyway, he was initiated or something like that. We didn't get a chance to talk on it too much. But she said, anyway, and Jesus, you know, this is from her studies. She was talking to Miss Riley, actually. She said, and Jesus spoke Aramaic, and his famous saying was, peace be unto you. Miss Riley said, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's what Jesus always said, peace be unto you. And he spoke Aramaic, and it's Assalamu alaikum. And if you walk in the church and say Assalamu alaikum, they'll throw you out. You know, but I mean, it's funny, but I'm just saying, the scholars know this stuff. I'm just saying things as simple as that. You know, and once you understand these fundamentals, your naivety starts dying. And the naivety is part of the three S's, you know, social solid system. And then you start growing up. And then you have a tendency to start noticing that your leg is not really tickling. The preacher got his hand in your pocket. You know. So you start scratching and you start being more cognizant of that. And of course, they can't pull you in the pit no more. You know, so they're not too happy with you. You know, now they accuse you of robbing God because you ain't giving him $5. type of stuff. So the point that I'm making is this foundation covers so many things that is in the control system, social engineering at North America, that you could do a little research and then you start making notes and you could see the engineering, all of the processes, the Negro Act, Trading with the Enemy Act, the Buck Act, all of these things, House Joint Resolution 192, you find the fake bank holiday with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the bonding of the birth certificate, bank bond, all of this stuff is based in this coup d'etat. This was the foundation that was set forth for its operation. Meaning that they hadn't set up this foundation, they would not have been able to stabilize it. Because even fraud needs what you call institutional stabilization to operate. And so when you're looking at, again, what we have read recently, redundantly, the Pope's letter, this is really what the Pope is making reference to. So he's making reference, see, but a scholar recognizes, and this is why when the Popes talk about major, minor in the letter, the major is Constitution for the United States. The minor, Constitution of the United States. Major, the legitimate organic constitution of the land coming from Muslim law, i.e., whose descendants have been used as the true creditors and bond for the U.S. debt. That's why he said African Americans. You understand? So he's telling you the history. And the coup, without telling you. But he's talking to scholars and he's talking to government, so he already knows that they know what's up. So he doesn't have to make explanations like we're making. He doesn't have to footnote it. But at the same time, even if a person who doesn't have scholarship reads the Pope's letter of civil orders that Anna Maria, von Ritz, presented and critiques, it tells you so much history in that one piece of instrument that just turns over all the institutions. It kills the naivety. If someone's naive after reading Pope Francis' letter, they're not naive, they're hypocritical, and they're in total denial. But the deal of it is all persons that are heading or administrating any corporate entity under the United States or any of the states of entities or franchisees, including the American and British Bar Association, including members of the police force, including the Congress of the United States Corporation, and the directors, including the President, Commander-in-Chief, including the Supreme Court, the Provost Marshal, etc. All of them was addressed by the Pope, who owns all of their entities, which are called collectively, write this down, Roman Curia. Roman Curia, all of your corporate entities are members. And this is again where so-called different organizations that are registered in that 501c3 and others that act like they don't have this information, they're full of crap because they are members of the Roman Curia. And just because they don't talk about it openly or publicly doesn't change that. And the point that I'm making to you is once you understand these things, you waste less time being emotional about different leader girls and leader guys that may be actually stagnating the people while pretending to be raising them. When they're really sucking off of them, they're vampires. When the people should be left alone to develop. They should be telling them the truth and seeking out the best minds amongst the organized body and assigning them according to their zodiac chart of the birth of their mother so that humanity can make progress, because that's how things are supposed to be run, by meritocracy, you see. And so the assignment is by the zodiac, because that's the culture. This is why they have the zodiac in the courtyard at Philadelphia in the city hall, which is really a mosque, where they took your birthright. And of course the relationship of this is the Mummers Parade. And mum is the word, that's where you get that from. 33 degrees, etc. And this is why the cornerstone for that building is in a grave pit. In the dark north, where you see carved figures holding up the pillars of Atlas. And Atlas is Morocco. Then you have your parapet, North Gate, Masonic Lodge, #1, North Broad Street, building pen sitting on a parapet, 23.5 degrees, facing east by northeast, the Grand Lodge, and of course after the Mummers Parade, which assembles at 6 and Moore Street. It ends at the Masonic Hall, etc. But these are different symbols, meaning that the history is even in the architecture. But again, getting back to the point, because they're all related, that's why I'm making those points, but about you, hold on, excuse me.
Islam, and right behind the lodge is a judicial system, and that's where the appendix pointed at.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And of course, you already know, you're dealing with the alteration of the judicial system, or what is called color of authority, color of law. It is the founding of the democracy. And this is why you see the politicians will not say the republic, they'll keep saying our democracy. Because that's our coup, if you understand. So that's what's been running. And of course, this is why the Pope makes reference to that order as a rogue state. That rogue state, so look up the word rogue, it actually means traitors, cabal. You know, so that's what's running the operations here at North America. And see, so people sitting around talking about racism and prejudice, they're off the mark. And of course, that makes them incompetent. And of course, they're never going to solve anything because their concepts and their ideas are totally incorrect. All right, so when you're talking about Constitution, keep in mind there's a trinity there. Treaty of Peace and Friendship, the Ordinance of 1787, the Constitution for the United States of America, they're all together. And this is why, like when you see in Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States, right, it will say all debts and contracts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution, which is, you see the 3rd Act, right? That's, what is it? That's the treaty and the ordinance. See, all contracts, debts, and contracts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation, and all treaties made or which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. So how many people, when they're talking about supreme law of the land, talk about the treaty and the Constitution together? They don't. So they don't know that the treaty is supreme. Now you understand why the Pope said in the letter that the true obligation shall be enforced with the Constitution and the treaties. So the Pope is now telling the people what we've been telling them forever. You see, but you got to also recognize that the Pope's under pressure too. You know, because they got a couple of murder charges on him. You know, for the baby eating and all that stuff. And that's just a drop in the bucket. You know, and then of course they're being removed. And so what he's trying to do, definitely, whether he's trying to be an angel of light or not, they're trying to get on the right side of history because it's over. You know, once you understand these things, and then you'll understand why, like Philadelphia, the area, Shakamatsu, which is really, that area, is the fastest and the most heavily accelerated operations of gentrification in the country. It's taking place in Philadelphia, because this is also your wake-up area. Because a lot of your history is right there in that city, and they know as these people wake up and they start getting reconnected, there's not only what you call the spiritual electrical grid starts getting healed, but they're going to start accelerating in their capacity to go to their cell memory. And this is, we're talking about an operation in nature. We're not talking about necessarily, like we're here and we share information. Yeah, that's true. But let's go beyond that. You're dealing with an energy, whereas memory that you didn't know you had will start coming to the surface of your mind. Because everything that you need to know, your mother imprinted in you. And her mother imprinted in her. Which means all you need to know, truthfully, you already know. It's just that we've been compartmentalized. So it's a lot of things about ourselves that we're going to know that we didn't know we knew. Now, so when you're dealing with the operations of the activation of the cone, the pine cone, what you call the eye of Horus, that's in your brain, you know what I mean? When we're talking about how nature does, not what, just like when springtime comes, ain't nobody out there, when they can hold your hand on that branch all you want to. Them bugs is coming out. If they don't come out under your hand, they're going to come out around them. Likewise, as you go into this Aquarian energy, as you're going into the Aquarian energy, what's called the light, the Piscean energy starts fading out. And ain't nothing you're going to do to stop that. And just like, like you see the operations of the Earth, in the rotation of this particular solar system, we're going in what they call the big wheel, clock of destiny, coming close to the center. And so the energy is going to change. It's absolutely going to change, and so the things that were, or that had what you call free reign in the constellation of Pisces can't live in the Aquarian